crystalline ships of the Valoran conclave darkened the skies above New Ascension Colony. They descended like predatory birds, their translucent hulls refracting the dying sunlight into prismatic weapons that sliced through the settlement's defensive grid. Commander Elora Frost stood on the observation deck, her weathered face illuminated by emergency lighting as she watched humanity's last outpost in the Cygnus Arm crumble. "Evacuation status," she demanded, voice steady despite the tremors rocking the command center. Lieutenant Daver looked up from his console, ashen-faced. 63% complete, Commander, but the civilian transports won't clear atmosphere. Before the Valorans established their containment field, 8,000 colonists, farmers, engineers, teachers, children, trapped like insects under glass. The Valorans didn't kill immediately. They studied, they cataloged, they considered it merciful. "The Starward Echo?" Elora asked. "Prepped and ready in Bay 4. But it's a scout vessel, Commander. Maximum capacity of 3. 3 survivors from a colony of 12,000. The brutal math of extinction. Get me Pilot Kalex and Dr. Naomi," Elora ordered, already moving toward the emergency lift. The station's AI responded with a soft chime as another explosion rattled the structure's foundation. Marin Kalex was already at the ship when she arrived, his mismatched eyes, one amber, one cybernetic silver, scanning system diagnostics. The tall, lanky pilot's fingers danced across the controls with preternatural speed. "Commander," he acknowledged without looking up, "I've plotted 17 potential escape vectors, all suicidal in slightly different ways." Dr. Rivka Naomi arrived, moments later, clutching a reinforced case to her chest as if it contained her still-beating heart. The xenoanthropologist's normally impeccable appearance had deteriorated, lab coat singed, dark hair escaping its tight coil. "The archives?" Elora asked. Rivka nodded. "Everything we've collected on the Gardener. Every fragment, every contradictory myth, every star chart where sightings were reported. You're bringing fairy tales to our last stand?" Marin's voice held no judgment, only weary resignation. "The Gardener is real," Rivka insisted, the same fire in her eyes that had made her both respected and ridiculed in scientific circles. "The evidence spans 12 distinct species across 9 galactic sectors, and yet no one has ever found her," Elora interrupted. "In 300 years of interstellar exploration, not one confirmed encounter." Another explosion, closer this time. The hangar bay doors groaned. "We don't have time for this," Marin said. "If we're going to die anyway, I'd prefer to do it in space rather than in a Valoran stasis field." Elora made her decision. "We're not evacuating." Both looked at her with confusion. "Commander?" Rivka questioned. "We're not evacuating," Elora repeated. "Because we're going hunting." She turned to Rivka. "If your Gardener exists, where would we find her?" Hope bloomed across Rivka's face. "The Cerulean Void, where the Hadrax Nebula meets the quantum rifts." "It's suicide," Marin finished. "The void tears ships apart. The radiation alone would kill us before we got halfway." "But the myths say she dwells at the edges of survivable space," Rivka countered, "where life meets impossibility." The station shuddered violently. Emergency sirens wailed as sections began depressurizing. "Plot the course," Elora ordered Marin. "If humanity dies, today let's make our last act one of discovery rather than retreat." As the Starward Echo broke atmosphere, slipping between the crystalline warships like a minnow between sharks, Elora watched her colony, her responsibility, shrink to a gleaming dot on the view screen. The Valoran ships pivoted with mechanical precision, their weapon systems tracking the tiny escapee. "They're pursuing," Marin announced unnecessarily. "Good," Elora replied. "Let's see if they believe in myths." The Starward Echo screamed through the darkness, its engines pushed far beyond safety protocols. Behind them, 5 Valoran hunters, followed in perfect formation, their crystalline structures somehow maintaining cohesion despite the speeds. "How do they move like that?" Rivka wondered aloud, watching the tactical display. "Their ships should shatter under these forces. Ask them when they catch us," Marin replied dryly, his hands never leaving the controls. Estimated time to cerulean void, 17 hours. Estimated time until Valoran weapons lock, 11 hours. Elora stood behind them, one hand gripping the bulkhead as the ship's compensator struggled with another course correction. Options? We could try the Caraxes asteroid field, Moran suggested. It's unstable, but I might navigate it. The crystalline structure of their ships makes them more vulnerable to kinetic impacts. Too predictable, Elora countered. They've hunted humans across 12 systems. They know our strategies. Rivka had been silent, her attention focused on the ancient data tablets she'd extracted from her case. The screens glowed with strange symbols, not human language but something older and more abstract. The Valorans are pursuing us specifically, she said suddenly, not just as human stragglers but because of where we're headed. Elora turned. Explain. The Valorans have been systematically eliminating species that have knowledge of the we, Gardner, Rivka continued, excitement and fear mingling in her voice. Look at the pattern of their conquest. They targeted the Thelai archives first, then the Osprian monastic worlds. Both civilizations that preserve the oldest Gardner myths. You're suggesting they fear your fairy tale? Marin asked, skepticism evident. Or they know it's not a tale at all, Rivka countered. The ship lurched as Marin executed another evasive maneuver. 6 Valoran ships now, he reported. They're calling friends. Elora studied the tactical display. They're not trying to destroy us. They're herding us away from the void. All three fell silent as the implication settled over them. Whatever waited in the cerulean void, the Valorans wanted to prevent their arrival. Tell me about this Gardner, Elora finally said to Rivka. Not the academic version. Tell me what you believe. Rivka's fingers traced the alien symbols on her tablet. The name varies across cultures. The gardener, the caretaker, she who plants stars. The earliest accounts describe her as a being who tends reality itself, nurturing cosmic life where conditions permit it. She hesitated. Some texts suggest she's as old as the universe. Others claim she's what remains of the universe that came before. A god? Marin asked. An entity beyond our comprehension, Rivka corrected. But the consistent element in every account is that she responds to genuine need, to desperation. The Jaxari records say she saved their species during the great stellar extinction by transplanting them to a new world. The heliotropic monks believe she guided their ancestors through a dimensional rift when their sun collapsed. Pretty selective savior, Elora noted. Plenty of species have gone extinct without divine intervention. Which is why most consider her a myth, Rivka acknowledged. But what if the common factor isn't just need but belief? Not religious faith, but something deeper. A profound recognition of connection between all living things. Another alarm blared through the ship. Marin cursed under his breath. Radiation levels rising, he reported. We're entering the void's outer boundary. Earlier than expected. The view screen shifted to compensate, revealing the breathtaking terror of the cerulean void. Space itself seemed to ripple like water, quantum particles dancing visible to the naked eye in impossible patterns. Colors no human language had names for pulse through the darkness. The pursuing Valoran ships slowed, their formation widening cautiously. They won't follow us in, Rivka whispered. Because they're smarter than we are, Marin replied. Commander, we need to reconsider. The ship's shielding won't hold against this radiation for more than a few hours. Elora stared into the swirling chaos of the void. Humanity's last hope wasn't a mythical gardener. It was practical solutions. Escape, perhaps finding another colony that had somehow evaded the Valoran purge. And yet, take us in, she ordered. Full thrust. As the starward echo plunged into the quantum maelstrom, the Valoran ships fired their first warning shots across their bow. The cerulean void consumed them. Reality twisted around the starward echo, space folding and unfolding like origami in the hands of a mad god. The ship's sensors shrieked with contradictory readings. They were everywhere and nowhere, moving at both incredible speed and perfect stillness. Outside the viewports, stars streaked past in impossible colors, their light bending into shapes that hurt the human mind to perceive. Moran's hands danced across the controls, but his efforts were increasingly symbolic. In this place, conventional piloting meant nothing. Hull integrity at 68% and falling, he reported, voice strained. Radiation shielding failing, systematically. We have maybe 20 minutes before we're cooked from the inside out. Rivka stood transfixed before the viewport, her dark eyes reflecting the quantum chaos. It's beautiful, she murmured, like watching the universe dream. Elora felt it too, a strange, almost narcotic pull. The void wasn't just challenging their ship. It was reaching into their minds, reshaping perception. She forced herself to focus on the tactical situation. The Vailorans? Marin checked the sensors. Still holding position at the boundary. They're patient. If we don't die in here, they'll be waiting when we limp out. If we survive this, we won't be limping anywhere, Elora said grimly. She turned to Rivka. This gardener of yours, how do we find her? How do we call her? Rivka tore her gaze from the viewport. The accounts vary. The heliotropes created harmonic resonances they believed mirrored cosmic frequencies. The Juxari performed ritual sacrifices. Let's avoid that second option, Marin muttered. But the oldest references, Rivka continued, retrieving a particular data tablet, speak of something simpler. They say she responds to truth, to a mind that perceives reality as it truly is, without self-deception or evasion. Elora almost laughed. That's your scientific protocol? We tell the truth to the void? Not just any truth, Rivka insisted. The truth that matters most, the truth we're running from. The hull groaned as another wave of quantum distortion washed over them. Warning lights cascaded across the control panels. 15 minutes, Miran updated quietly. Elora looked between her two companions, the last remnants of humanity she knew for certain still existed. A bitter truth surfaced in her mind. They were going to die for nothing. No mythical entity would save them. The Valorans would catalog humanity's remains and continue their methodical expansion across the galaxy. I'll go first, she said suddenly. Before either could question her, she stepped to the viewport and placed her palm against the transparent aluminum, feeling the vibrations of the void against her skin. My name is Commander Elora Frost, she announced to the quantum chaos. I've led 12,000 souls to their deaths because I believed we could outrun extinction, because I convinced them that humanity deserved to survive when other species fell. I told them we were special. Her voice broke slightly. We're not special. We're just afraid to die alone. The void's patterns shifted subtly, curling toward the ship like curious tendrils. Rivka stepped forward next, standing shoulder to shoulder with Elora. I'm Dr. Rivka Naomi. I've devoted my life to studying the gardener because I couldn't accept that the universe is indifferent to our existence. I needed to believe something out there recognized our struggle, our consciousness. I needed cosmic validation. She pressed her own hand to the viewport. But now, facing oblivion, I understand. It was never about being seen by the divine. It was about seeing truly ourselves. The quantum currents pulsed, cerulean light brightening throughout the void. Marin remained at the controls, shaking his head. This is insanity, he muttered. But after another system failure alert, he sighed and joined them. Marin Kalex, I've spent my life running. From responsibility, from connection, from the knowledge that nothing I do ultimately matters in the cosmic scale. I became a pilot because space is emptiness, and in emptiness, I never had to acknowledge my own. As his words faded, the void around them paused. The chaotic patterns froze, then realigned into intricate geometries. The ship stopped shuddering. Radiation levels dropping, Marin reported, disbelief in his voice. That's impossible. Through the viewport, the quantum distortions began coalescing, gathering like water droplets into a singular form before the ship. Colors shifted, solidified, took shape. Not mechanical or crystalline like the Valoran vessels, but organic, fluid, alive. Elora's breath caught in her throat. "Is that her?" Rivka whispered, tears streaming down her face. "The gardener." The entity before them defied categorization. She, and somehow they all felt the pronoun was correct, existed as a shimmering intersection of matter and energy, her form simultaneously plant-like and celestial. Tendrils of living light extended from a core that pulsed with the same rhythm as a beating heart, yet spanned the size of a small moon. Patterns flowed across her surface that resembled galaxies in miniature, stars birthing and dying in microseconds. Within the starward echo, all systems had stabilized. The radiation that should have killed them was simply absent. "She's creating a safe pocket in the void," Rivka breathed, her scientific detachment overwhelmed by wonder. "Bending physics around us." Marin's fingers flew across the sensor controls. "I can't get any meaningful readings. It's like trying to measure a dream." A gentle pressure built inside their minds. Not invasive, but questioning. An ancient awareness brushing against their consciousness. "She's trying to communicate," Rivka said, closing her eyes to focus on the sensation. Elora felt it too, concepts rather than words, impressions rather than language. Age beyond comprehension, curiosity, recognition. She knows what humans are, Elora realized. We've been here before, or others like us. The entity pulsed, and suddenly the view screen activated independently, displaying star charts and celestial coordinates that shifted rapidly. "She's showing us something," Marin said, hastily recording the data. Locations, dozens of them, scattered across the galaxy. Understanding dawned on Rivka's face. Not just locations, refugees, places where the Vylorans can't or won't go. Her voice quickened with excitement. Places where she's transplanted other species they tried to eradicate. The gardener's form shifted, opening like a cosmic flower to reveal within her core a swirling nebula of luminescent spores, each one containing what appeared to be miniature biospheres, suspended in perfect equilibrium. "Seeds," Elora whispered. "She literally gardens species." "Preserves them," Rivka corrected, her scientific mind reasserting itself through the awe. "An ecological arc." She turned to Elora, eyes wide. "Commander, I think she's offering to save what remains of humanity." Before Elora could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. On the tactical display, the Vyloran vessels had moved. They were entering the void. "They've never done that before," Rivka said, fear edging her voice. "In all the accounts of their hunts, they've never risked the quantum boundaries." "We're worth the risk," Elora said grimly. "Or rather, preventing contact with the gardener." Is the entity pulsed again, more urgently. The pressure in their minds intensified, conveying something new. Concern, warning. Marin interpreted the data streaming across his console. "I think she's telling us the Valorans have encountered her before. They've corrupted something? The translation isn't clear." "Not corrupted," Rivka said slowly, her expression changing as she processed the impressions. "Perverted. They found one of her gardens, and instead of preserving the species there, they harvested them, used their biological distinctiveness to enhance themselves." The gardener's form contracted slightly, tendrils pulling inward as if in pain at the memory. "That's why they hunt down knowledge of her," Elora realized. "They don't want other species finding and protecting the remaining gardens." The tactical display updated. The Valoran ships were suffering in the void, their crystalline structures fracturing under the quantum stresses, but still they advanced, weapons charged. "We need to decide," Marin said urgently. "Commander, if she's offering sanctuary." Elora studied the entity before them, this ancient, incomprehensible being who had apparently been preserving doomed species since before humans learned to make fire. The gardener who cultivated diversity across the cosmic landscape. "If we go with you," she addressed the entity directly, "what happens to us? Do we sleep for eternity in your garden?" Do we forget who we are? The answer came not in words, but in visions. Humans living on a world unlike Earth, but adapted for them, rebuilding, remembering, continuing. Not in stasis, but in life. And alongside them, other refugees from Valoran expansion, different species learning to coexist in this protected realm. Not extinction, Rivka translated softly. Evolution. The Valoran ships were drawing closer, their weapons powering up despite the damage they were sustaining. Elora made her decision. We accept your offer, she told the gardener, but not just for us. For all humans, the Valorans haven't yet destroyed, if any remain. The entity pulsed, with what felt like solemn agreement. Her tendrils extended toward the starward echo, enveloping it in living light. The last thing they saw before reality shifted around them was the Valoran fleet firing desperately into the quantum void, their crystalline weapons shattering against the gardener's true power. Light fragmented, reassembled, and stabilized. When the disorientation passed, the viewports of the starward echo revealed not the quantum chaos of the cerulean void, but a star system unlike any they had seen before. 3 suns, amber, azure, and ivory, performed a complex gravitational dance around a central point, their light casting multiple shadows across the ship's interior. Where are we? Elora asked, her usual composure temporarily abandoned in the face of cosmic displacement. Marin checked the navigational systems, which displayed nothing but error messages. No recognized stellar configurations. We're not just outside mapped. Space. We're outside recognizable space-time. Rivka stood transfixed, watching a world grow larger as they approached, evidently pulled by the gardener's influence rather than their own propulsion. The planet defied conventional planetary science. Land masses shifted visibly even from orbit. Oceans gleamed with bioluminescence, and the atmosphere swirled with patterns too ordered to be natural weather. It's designed, she whispered. An engineered ecosystem. The ship descended through cloud layers that parted around them like conscious entities. As they broke through to lower altitudes, the landscape revealed itself in breathtaking detail. Forests with canopies and impossible fractals, plains where the vegetation formed mathematical patterns, mountain ranges that curved with perfect symmetry. There are structures, Marin noted, enhancing the viewport magnification. Settlements. Scattered across the landscape were communities, some resembling cities, others more like interconnected village networks. None appeared technological in the human sense, yet all displayed clear signs of intelligence in their construction. As they drew closer to what appeared to be a designated landing area, a circular clearing that opened as they approached, they saw the inhabitants. Other refugees. Rivka breathed. Dozens of species moved through the settlements. Some were vaguely humanoid, others utterly alien. Crystalline beings that hovered above the ground, amorphous entities that flowed like quicksilver, 6-limbed, creatures that built elaborate structures in the trees, all coexisting, all clearly thriving. The starward echo settled gently onto the ground. Through the viewports they saw a gathering of beings approaching, a welcoming committee of sorts representing various species. Should we be concerned about atmospheric compatibility? Marin asked pragmatically. Rivka checked the external sensors. Remarkably Earth-like with slightly higher oxygen content. It's as if... She paused. As if it's been adjusted for us specifically. The ship's systems chimed, indicating the external environment was safe. Elora made her decision. Let's meet our new neighbors, she said, moving toward the airlock. Stay alert, but remember, these aren't our enemies. They're survivors like us. The outer doors cycled open, and Earth's last known representatives stepped onto alien soil. The air carried scents of unfamiliar blossoms and mineral compounds, yet felt surprisingly comfortable to breathe. The triple suns cast light that should have been blinding but somehow adjusted to their human visual tolerance. The welcoming delegation stopped at a respectful distance. At their fore stood a being that approximated humanoid form, bipedal, with a head and 4 limbs, but whose skin rippled with colors that seemed to communicate as effectively as words. Beside it towered an entity composed of what appeared to be living crystal, not unlike Valoran technology but clearly sentient in its own right. "I am Zyvax," the color-shifting being said in perfect English, though its mouth, if the facial opening could be called that, didn't move in synchronization with the words. "Last speaker of the Lumidari, we have been expecting you." Elora's surprise must have shown on her face because the crystalline being emitted a sound like wind chimes, apparently laughter. "The gardener prepares us for each arrival," Zyvax continued. "We learned your language, your basic customs. There are others here who will seem more familiar to you. The Tarasi share many biological similarities with humans." "How many species live here?" Rivka asked, her xenoanthropologist's curiosity overwhelming her shock. 17 fully established, 4 in early adaptation phases, Zyvax answered. "All refugees from Valoran expansion, all finding new ways to exist." "And the gardener?" Elora questioned. "Where is she now?" Zyvax's colors shifted to deeper blues. "Everywhere. This entire world is her creation, her body in a sense, but her consciousness travels. Even now she searches for others who need sanctuary." The crystalline being made a gesture toward the forests beyond the settlement. The canopy parted, revealing massive tendrils of living light rising from the planet's surface into the sky. The same tendrils they had seen in the void, but now integrated with the ecosystem itself. "You will have questions," Zyvax acknowledged. "About your future here, about whether other humans might join you, about what becomes of your species now, about whether we'll ever reclaim our place in the galaxy," Marin added quietly. Zyvax's colors rippled with something like compassion. "Come, there is someone you should meet." They followed the delegation through the settlement, past dwellings built from living materials that adjusted to the environment, past gardens where plants responded to the mere proximity of their tenders. Other refugees watched them pass, some with obvious curiosity, others with knowing sympathy. At the settlement's edge stood a single structure different from the others, constructed of metals and composites that appeared salvaged from spacecraft. Outside it stood a figure that made all 3 humans stop in their tracks. A human woman. Elderly, white-haired, but unmistakably human. "I told her you'd come," the woman said, her voice cracking with age and emotion. "When the Valorans found our colony, I told her humans weren't finished yet." She straightened, pride evident in her bearing despite her years. "Admiral Karenza Voss, formerly of the Third Earth Fleet. Welcome to Sanctuary, the last outpost of humanity." She smiled, tears in her eyes. "And the first garden of our future." 5 years passed on Sanctuary, though time flowed strangely under the light of the triple suns. The human refugees, now numbering 26 with the discovery of 3 other escape vessels that had fled different colonies, had established their place among the refugee species. Elora stood on the observation platform she'd built atop her dwelling, watching the settlement as dusk approached. The Lumidari dwellings glowed with bioluminescence as night fell, while the crystalline azure reflected the last sunlight in dazzling prismatic displays. Human structures remained more utilitarian, though flourishes of beauty had begun to appear as survival gave way to living. Still watching the skies, she turned to find Marin climbing up to join her. The pilot had changed in their years on Sanctuary, less guarded, more present. He'd found purpose teaching human spatial navigation techniques to the other species, whose concepts of movement through dimensions often differed radically from human understanding. "Always," she admitted. "You never completely stop looking for threats. Or possibilities," he countered gently. Below them, in the central gathering space, several humans worked alongside Lumidari and Tarasi representatives, assembling components, salvaged from their combined technological knowledge. The project had begun 2 years ago, when Admiral Voss suggested combining their understanding of different physical principles. "How's the quantum communicator progressing?" Elora asked. "Rivka thinks another month, maybe less." "The Azir crystals were the breakthrough. They can maintain quantum entanglement across dimensional boundaries." He looked at her carefully. If it works, we might be able to contact other human outposts, if any survived. Maybe even coordinate. The implication hung between them. Coordination meant potential resistance, eventual reclamation of their place in the galaxy. Some humans on Sanctuary dreamed of return and revenge. Others had found peace in their new existence. The gardener hasn't returned since bringing the last group, Elora noted, changing the subject slightly. Admiral Voss thinks that might mean there are no more humans to save, or that she's engaged elsewhere. The Valorans aren't the only threat to diversity in the cosmos. They stood in companionable silence as the final sun dipped below the horizon. In the distance, the massive tendrils of the gardener's physical form pulsed gently with internal light, maintaining the delicate balance of the engineered ecosystem. Council meeting tonight, Marin finally said. The Lumidari have proposed a knowledge exchange program, allowing direct neural connection for sharing cultural memories. Rivka will be ecstatic, Elora noted wryly. The xenoanthropologist had fully embraced their new reality, documenting the cultural practices of each species with meticulous enthusiasm. And you? Marin asked. Will Commander Frost authorize humans to open their minds to alien influence? Elora smiled slightly. I'm not commander of anything anymore, just a representative. You'll always be commander to us, he replied. Then, hesitated. The Azir elder Kristari asked me something interesting yesterday. She wanted to know if humans had myths about beings like the gardener before we encountered her. What did you tell her? That we had thousands of myths about divine gardeners and caretakers, that humans have always believed something greater watched over the cosmic order, even when science told us we were alone. Marin looked toward the Yao, pulsing tendrils in the distance. I told her that believing in myths is a uniquely human strength. A chime sounded from the settlement center, the council summons. As they descended from the observation platform, Elora noticed a rare phenomenon occurring. The tendrils of light that connected Sanctuary to the gardener's consciousness were brightening, pulsing with increased activity. The council chamber, a circular structure with architecture that accommodated all 17 established species, was already filling when they arrived. Rivka waved them over to where she stood with Admiral Voss, both women looking unusually animated. The quantum communicator picked up something, Rivka said without preamble. Not another human transmission, but something else. Violaran? Elora asked sharply. No. Admiral Voss's weathered face held a complex expression, hope tempered by wariness. A dimensional ripple, the same kind that precedes the gardener's manifestation. As if summoned by the words, the chamber's central, space filled with swirling light. Species representatives moved back respectfully as reality itself seemed to fold inward, creating an opening through which stepped, not the cosmic entity they expected, but a humanoid figure. Tall, slender, with skin that held the same shifting patterns as the quantum void. Her eyes, if they could be called that, contained spinning galaxies. An avatar, Rivka whispered. She's created a form to communicate directly. The gardener's avatar surveyed the gathered refugees, acknowledgement passing over her features as she recognized each species. When her gaze fell on the humans, something like fondness played across her cosmic features. The seeds take root, she said, her voice resonating not through air but directly within their minds. But now a choice comes. The chamber fell silent. Even the species that typically communicated through constant sound or motion grew still. The Valorans have found another of my gardens, the avatar continued. They harvest its inhabitants, now many will be lost before I can relocate the survivors. Horror passed through the assembly. Each species present had escaped that very fate. You have built something remarkable here, the gardener acknowledged, gesturing to the representatives. Not merely coexistence, but collaboration, evolution, of culture rather than just biology. What choice do you offer us? Admiral Voss asked, stepping forward with the authority of her years. To remain in safety, the avatar said, or to stand with me against those who would reduce universal consciousness to mere biological resource. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The azure crystals vibrated with agitation, while the amorphous Kethri pulsed rapid color changes of alarm. "We are refugees, not warriors," Zivax of the Lumidari said. "We have no weapons that could challenge Valoran technology." "You have knowledge," the gardener countered. "Each species here understands an aspect of existence the Valorans cannot comprehend. Together you represent the diversity they seek to homogenize." Elora stepped forward. "What exactly are you proposing?" The Avatar's cosmic eyes focused on her. "A reclaiming, not of territory, but of possibility. The Valorans believe, themselves the inevitable evolutionary conclusion, that all consciousness must eventually become as they are. You 17 species prove that falsehood. You want us to be examples," Rivka realized. "Proof that diversity strengthens rather than weakens cosmic life." "I want you to be gardeners," the Avatar corrected, "to help me transplant threatened consciousness, to nurture new forms of being, to stand as witnesses that even extinction can be overcome." Understanding dawned across the assembled representatives. This was not a call to war. It was an invitation to purpose. Admiral Voss straightened her aging frame. "Humans have always believed in myths," she said firmly, "and sometimes believing makes them true." She turned to the other human refugees. "I volunteer to assist the gardener." One by one, representatives from each species stepped forward. Zivax of the Lumidari, Kristari of the Azir, others whose names humans still struggled to pronounce. Not all, but many. Enough. Elora found herself moving forward without conscious decision. Commander Frost, who had led her people into the void on nothing but desperate hope, and Rivka's insistence that myths held truth. "The Valorans believe us extinct," she said. "Perhaps it's time they learned that humanity doesn't die easily, and we don't die alone." The gardener's avatar smiled, an expression somehow spanning multiple dimensions at once. "She was a myth," Rivka murmured, watching the cosmic being whose existence she had staked her career upon. But the human believed in her anyway. "And now?" Marin asked, joining them. "Now we become part of someone else's myth," Elora answered. "The species that returned from extinction to help seed the stars." Around them, the chamber filled with the light of decision. 17 species, once hunted to the edge of oblivion, now standing together as cosmic gardeners. Not extinct, but evolving. Not defeated, but transformed. The gardener's avatar extended her hands, and reality folded around them once again, opening pathways to distant stars where new gardens waited to be planted, and others waited to be saved. Humanity had found not just sanctuary but purpose. In believing the myth, they had become part of its living truth.